Okay, in this video we're going to take a look at a little bit of revision from National 5 that involves us writing our expressions with negative powers and also with the radicals taken out, and then actually going ahead and differentiating things like this. Okay, now we did say to you back in National 5 that this is one of the most important things that you need to be able to do in order to progress on to higher. Okay, so be very familiar with your index laws. If you're not sure of them, Google it or speak to your teacher. So I'm going to look at example 4a just now. We have 2 over x squared. So if I want to write that with a negative power, I'm going to use the index law that says 1 over x to the m is x to the power minus m. So that would just give me 2x to the power minus 2. So all I'm doing is taking the x up and I'm making the positive power into a negative power when it goes up to multiply. Okay. The next one, I have 1 over 4x to the power 5. So that's just the exact same as saying 1 over 4, bring the x up, make the positive power negative, x to the power negative 5. It's not going to be 4x to the negative 5 because it's still a quarter. We are still dividing by 4. We just take the power up and make it negative. And the same with this one, we have 3 over 5x, I should say. So bring the x up, leave the 5 alone where it is. So it'll just be 3/5. Now remember, this is x to the power 1. If it doesn't have a power, assume the power is 1. So it'll just be 3/5 x to the power of negative 1. Looking at example 5, writing these in index form. So we think of the index law that says x to the m over n is the nth root of x to the power m. So we have the square root of x. So we think of that as being the second root of x to the power 1, or the square root of x, we should say. That will just be x to the power of 1 over 2. The cubed root of x squared would just give me power over root. So we think of x to the power 2/3. This next one, we'll just take our time with this, okay? We've got 2 things that we need to do. First thing we need to do is apply the fractional power index law to that. So I would just leave it as 2 over 3. But this time I would make it say x to the power of 7/2. Okay, so just taking out the radical and then writing with a power. Now I want to totally separate my x from my fraction. So that would just be 2/3, keep the fraction at the front, and use our index law that says how to make it a negative power. So I get x to the power of negative 7/2. Okay, and it's that process that you need to be really good at in order to cope with differentiation at higher. Okay, so let's go ahead and apply this then. So I have f of x is equal to 4 over x cubed. So if I want to differentiate that, I can't differentiate it yet. I need to prepare it because I can't have my x as part of a fraction. So I'll say that f of x, I haven't differentiated yet, f of x equals 4x to the power of negative 3. Then I can go ahead and differentiate. So we get f dashed x equals negative 12 x to the power of negative 4. And it's always good practice to put your expression back into the form to which you were given. You were given it as a positive power. So let's go ahead and put that back in place. So I can say that f dashed x is going to be negative 12 over, and to make this a positive power, all I do is take my x back down to the bottom, change the negative to a positive. So it's negative 12 over x to the power 4. It's interesting to know here that the only higher bit is this line here. Okay, this line and this line are National 5. So it's imperative that you go back and revise that National 5 knowledge if you don't know it, because if you don't, you will really struggle with all forms of calculus in higher maths. The next one we have g of x equals 3 over 4x to the power 5. So again, I need to prepare it. So that will be g of x is equal to, take the number to the side, it's going to be 3/4 x to the power of -5. So then go ahead, differentiate. So we have g dashed x is going to be -15/4 x to the power of -6. And then let's write it back with a positive power. So let's put the x on the bottom and make the -6 a +6. So I get -15 over 4x to the power of 6. And the final one, we have 1 over the square root of x. So two transformations here before we differentiate. So I'll say that p of x equals 1 over, and that would be x to the power of half. Differentiate it. No, ignore me, I'm talking absolute rubbish. Don't differentiate it yet. We're still going to say p of x is equal to, we bring the x up and make it a negative power. So I get x to the -1/2. Now I can differentiate. So I get p dashed x is equal to -1/2 x to the power of, and it's just -1/2 take away 1 is going to give me -3/2. Okay. Now the trickier bit is putting that back into the form that you're given. So that's the exact same as saying -1 over 2 times x to the +3/2. And then put it back with the radical in place. So it's going to be -1 over 2 times the square root of x cubed. You can replay this video to see how I did that step by step. Okay.